I just want to say that was very, very impressive what you did back there.
He's just my first bad guy.
There has been a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe storytelling in Phase 4. Since the Infinity Saga wrapped up with Spider-Man Far From Home, however, there seems to be a pronounced lack of direction as to where it's all going. We're trying to follow the breadcrumbs, but we have to admit it's been tough going, and it's starting to show. In other words, Phase 4 needs a goal, and fast. As of July, Marvel Studios is 18 months into its Phase 4, consisting of 13 entries, 6 films, Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and the most recent release, Thor Love and Thunder. On the Disney Plus streaming side, there have been 7 original series: WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, and Ms. Marvel. To put that in perspective, it took Marvel Studios 8 years to release 13 movies across 3 phases, with approximately 26 hours of total storytelling time. Phase 4 is already up to 55 hours of storytelling time, with 4 more films and at least 4 more MCU streaming shows yet to debut within a year, and still no real end in sight to get us to Phase 5. If you're an MCU fan, it's a great time to be alive, but from a storytelling perspective, what's it all heading towards?
Things just got out of hand.
Obviously, the MCU had an overarching adversary threaded through the first 3 phases, and his name was Thanos.
Who?
The supervillain first teased in 2012's The Avengers, with his arc building to an epic conclusion in 2019's Avengers Endgame. And the repercussions of his actions are still being dealt with in a good portion of Phase 4's storytelling. In the absence of a Thanos-level big bad in this current collection of storytelling, President of Marvel Studios Kevin Feige, the guiding hand behind all MCU creative decisions, has touted Phase 4 for the introduction of the multiverse, with alternate timelines revealed that impact stories and characters audiences are already invested in. And he didn't fib, because Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Loki, What If, they're all entirely about the multiverse with sacred timelines versus alternate timelines. But what's been surprising is how none of those narratives actually connect or have any lasting implications yet. To summarize, Peter Parker took himself out of the superhero game to correct time. Doctor Strange basically did a standalone mess around with an alternate timeline, but there were no repercussions to his time. Loki introduced the TVA, who monitors timelines, and revealed a huge reality shift that hasn't touched any other storytelling. It had no impact on No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness, and then What If technically just portrayed a standalone worst-case arc of multiverse destruction. Outside of that, there's been a lot of movies and series in Phase 4 relying on it's the end of the world events that get fixed in the final act. Shang-Chi stopped the Dweller in Darkness from wiping out humanity. The Eternals managed to give the Celestials some intense homework as a delay tactic before wiping out humanity. Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes stopped the Flag Smashers terrorist attack that may have wiped out humanity. Peter Parker ×3 stopped a rogues gallery of multiversal supervillains from destroying New York and, humanity, etc., etc. Each end with everything mostly resolved, yet with a bigger cast of characters to service and some dangling story threads left to flap in the breeze until whatever is going on in Phase 4 can get back to them. And what about stakes? In Phase 3, the MCU was far more committed to making death stick, and there was a wealth of ugly cry moments born from those tough decisions. Tony Stark, Natasha Romanoff, Thanos, Killmonger, Hela, Yondu, Odin, all big players who have remained dead. And we thank the MCU for taking those big, seemingly permanent swings, which is why it's such a head-scratcher that Phase 4 has made a point in undermining the potency of death in the MCU. For one, it brought back Vision and Loki, 2 characters whose deaths literally devastated Thor and Wanda Maximoff, and us, in order to keep them in play. Now, we love Paul Bettany and Tom Hiddleston too, but reviving their characters frankly felt like trying to make a comic book trope work in film, and it just doesn't. This approach was exacerbated with a prequel solo adventure for Black Widow when we already knew how and when she dies, the stunt murder of Earth 838's Illuminati, and in Thor Love and Thunder tagging on the Valhalla reveal of both Jane and Heimdall, which means they're just sorta dead. Why should we bother to weep into our popcorn if the characters who don't make it can just be yoinked back whenever? Which leads us to the other big problem of Phase 4. they're starting too big. In the first 3 phases, Marvel Studios slowly built their roster of cinematic superheroes across 23 movies. Through standalone origin stories and the methodical introduction of new characters into cumulative Avengers films, the MCU grew a lot, but with a manageable bench of primary, secondary, and recurring support characters. Now, it's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the sheer volume of OG characters and new characters in their sandbox. And every new film and series adds a handful more major characters that gain a fan base who wants to see more of them. But it's impossible to actually tell the stories of even a fraction of them because the scope of the MCU has gotten so expansive. For example, Sam Wilson was introduced as the new Captain America in April 2021. He won't even get his own movie until 2023 or beyond. In comparison, at worst, the longest span where we didn't see Steve Rogers was the 2 years between the Avengers and Captain America the Winter Soldier. And that's just one Avenger. And it's only getting worse with the MCU's new normal of stunt cast introductions in the mid-credit or end-credit scenes. In Phase 4, there's Harry Styles as Eros and Patton Oswalt as Pip, Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Charlize Theron as Clea, and Brett Goldstein as Hercules, with surely more surprises to come. It used to be a thrill when a major actor was announced in an upcoming MCU movie, but lately, we're wondering if there's any A-listers left to choose from, and if they get cast, when will we actually see them play that character? Which brings us back to the why of it all. We respect the MCU not trying to immediately repeat itself with a new Thanos because that would be like trying to capture lightning in a bottle twice. But we're really feeling the lack of clarity, or any sort of identifiable through line to at least the cinematic narratives. Yes, we see the potential piecemeal assemblage of the MCU's spin on a young Avengers lineup or a new Avengers roster. We know Kang is on the horizon, maybe in Quantumania, and we know the upcoming streaming series Secret Invasion is threading the Skrulls from Captain Marvel into the next massive threat to the planet, but even that potential reveal feels like too little too late in establishing an overall focus and sense of narrative purpose when the majority of Phase 4 storytelling has just felt scattershot and disjointed. It's asking a lot for Secret Invasion to pull this arc out of the weeds. So, back to the main question. After 55 hours of Phase 4, where exactly are we? That's more than 2 Infinity Sagas combined, but I'd be hard-pressed to tell you what the overarching story is in this new era of Marvel. Have there been good or even great moments to be found in those 55 hours? Sure, but the MCU has long been about the bigger story of this universe. And it sure is starting to feel like the MCU needs a goal, and fast. For more MCU, check out what we thought of Thor: Love and Thunder, and for everything else, stay tuned to IGN.